Dr. Sarah Kim stood before the massive Vorthack engine, her engineering toolkit looking comically primitive next to the crystalline monitoring arrays and quantum field manipulators that surrounded the legendary device. The greatest minds in the galaxy had gathered on Research Station Omega-7 to witness what many believed would be another failed attempt to understand the Empire's most mysterious technology. The Vorthack engine had been discovered a century ago in the ruins of an extinct civilization, and despite intensive study by 12 different species, no one understood how it worked. The device could generate enough clean energy to power an entire star system, but every attempt to replicate its design had failed catastrophically. 3 research stations had been destroyed in the process, and the Galactic Engineering Consortium had nearly classified the technology as incomprehensibly advanced. Professor Zwiak-Thala, the Arctonian lead researcher, addressed the assembled scientists through her universal translator. "Colleagues, this is Engineer Kim from the recently admitted human species. The Earth delegation has requested an opportunity to examine the Vorthack engine." A ripple of polite skepticism passed through the crowd. The Corathans had spent 30 years analyzing the device's quantum matrices. The Crystalline Collective had devoted their entire hive mind processing power to mapping its energy patterns. The mechanical synthesis had even attempted to interface directly with the engine's control systems, resulting in a feedback loop that had shut down their consciousness for 3 months. Sarah ignored the whispered doubts and approached the engine with the kind of casual confidence that made advanced civilizations nervous. She pulled out a simple diagnostic scanner, barely more sophisticated than the medical tricorders used by human military medics. "Has anyone tried turning it off and on again?" she asked. The silence that followed was so complete that the station's atmospheric recyclers seemed thunderous by comparison. Dr. Corthex, a Zephyrian quantum engineer with 16 doctoral degrees, made a sound that roughly translated to indignant sputtering. "Engineer Kim, this is the most sophisticated piece of technology ever discovered. We have performed spectral analysis, dimensional mapping, temporal resonance testing." "Right, but have you tried turning it off and on again?" Sarah repeated, already kneeling beside what appeared to be the engine's primary power coupling. "The device cannot be deactivated," Professor Zwiak-Thala explained patiently. "Its power source is integrated into its quantum matrix. Any attempt to interrupt the energy flow would reset the initialization sequence, yeah." Sarah was now examining the base of the engine with what looked suspiciously like a flashlight. "That's actually pretty standard for this type of setup." "Standard?" Dr. Corthex's voice rose several octaves. "This technology predates our civilizations by millennia." Sarah paused her inspection and looked up at the assembled scientists with genuine confusion. "Wait, you guys never figured out the Vorthack weren't the builders?" The research station's AI registered a collective drop in blood pressure among 17 different species, as every scientist present experienced simultaneous existential crisis. "What do you mean?" Professor Zwiak-Thala asked weakly. "Well, look at the construction." Sarah pointed to various sections of the engine with her flashlight. "See these mounting brackets? They're way too big for the components they're holding. And these control interfaces are positioned at about 7 different heights, like they were designed for multiple species to use simultaneously." She stood up, brushing dust off her knees. "This isn't Vorthack technology. This is a maintenance station." Dr. Corthex's translator made several sounds that didn't correspond to any known language before managing. "A maintenance station? Yeah, probably for servicing smaller power units. The Vorthack found it, figured out how to turn it on, but never understood what it was actually for. They just kept feeding it broken equipment, and it kept fixing everything and sending it back." Sarah pulled out a simple multi-tool and began removing an access panel that had been welded shut. The reason you can't replicate it is because you've been trying to build a repair shop instead of the thing it's designed to fix. But the energy output, Professor Zwiexthala protested. It's massive. Well, yeah. It's running full diagnostic cycles on equipment that isn't there anymore. Sarah's multi-tool revealed a simple control interface covered in what was obviously centuries of accumulated space dust. It's basically been running a system check for the last 1,000 years. She pressed a clearly marked reset button. The Vortak engine, which had hummed with mysterious power for a century, went silent. Emergency lighting flickered on throughout the research station as backup power systems engaged. Oops, Sarah said mildly. Before anyone could panic, the engine chimed cheerfully and began displaying holographic text in 17 different languages, including 3 that had been considered extinct. Diagnostic complete. No external devices detected. Entering standby mode. Thank you for using Galactic Standard Maintenance Protocol 7.2, Sarah read aloud. Huh. Looks like whoever built this really liked clear user interfaces. The assembled scientists stared as Sarah connected her simple diagnostic scanner to the now cooperative interface. Within minutes, she was downloading complete technical specifications that had eluded galactic civilization for a century. The funny thing is, she said conversationally while the data streamed to her scanner, this is actually pretty basic stuff. Fusion-assisted matter reconstruction, quantum-level component analysis, automated resource allocation. We've got theoretical frameworks for most of this back on Earth. Theoretical frameworks? Dr. Corthex asked faintly. Yeah, we just never had the material science to build it. But now that we know what we're looking for, Sarah grinned. Give us a couple years, and we'll probably have these things mass-produced. Professor Zwiexthala's eye stalks drooped with what could only be described as defeat. Engineer Kim, how did you know to look for a reset button? Sarah shrugged. Back home, we've got a saying, the more advanced the technology, the more likely someone forgot to include proper documentation. When all else fails, look for the switch they thought was too obvious to mention. As the research station scientists began to process the implications of having spent a century studying a piece of maintenance equipment, Sarah was already sketching improvements in her notebook. You know, she mused, if we optimize the power coupling and upgrade the diagnostic algorithms, we could probably get this thing to handle real-time repairs instead of just batch processing. Somewhere in the Galactic Communications Network, an automated message was being transmitted to the Galactic Engineering Consortium. Recommend immediate revision of technology classification protocols. Also recommend hiring more humans.